Good day. In today's top story, the NATO alliance faces internal tensions as the United States intensifies its war on Iran. President Trump has publicly threatened to withdraw the US from NATO, citing what he calls Europe's failure to assist in the conflict. He also ordered new troop deployments and hinted at possible ground operations in Iran. But importantly, no ground invasion order has been issued. We'll examine facts and fallout from these claims. US ground invasion claim. Reports have circulated that the US military is planning a ground invasion of Iran. In reality, top US officials are deploying additional troops to the Middle East and discussing potential limited ground raids, but no decision or timeline for invading Iran's homeland has been publicly announced. A Reuters report cites Pentagon preparations for possible raids by special forces and infantry, but says it's unclear whether President Trump will approve such plans. In other words, US forces are building capacity for various missions, but there is no confirmed invasion order. Analysts note that sending troops into Iran would carry huge political risk given low public support. Generals dismissed. Another viral claim held that Trump sacked 3 generals who opposed invading Iran. We checked official sources. The Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, was indeed removed on April 2nd, 2026, as confirmed by the Pentagon and reported by Reuters and the Associated Press. 2 other Army generals, David Hodden and William Green, were also abruptly relieved of duty. However, no credible evidence links their removal to any disagreement about Iran. The Pentagon offered no explanation. In fact, sources say this shakeup is part of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's broader restructuring, not a reaction to dissent. So while generals were fired, the claim that they were ousted for opposing a ground war is unverified. NATO reaction and exit threat. The heart of the story is Trump's vow to consider leaving NATO if European allies don't help in the Iran war. Here is what we know. In a Reuters interview, Trump said he was absolutely, without question, thinking of pulling the US out of NATO because Europe refused to send ships to secure the Strait of Hormuz. He has a history of denouncing NATO and even seizing Greenland. But leaving NATO isn't simple. Article 13 of the NATO treaty does allow any member to quit after 1 year's notice. Yet in 2023, Congress passed a law requiring a 2/3 Senate vote before the US can withdraw from NATO. No president has ever tried this, and Senate approval is considered near impossible. Even without a formal exit, legal experts warn Trump could refuse to defend allies under Article 5, effectively undermining the alliance. Leading Republicans have already rebuked Trump on this. Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell and Senator Tom Tillis publicly warned that quitting NATO would aid rivals like Russia or China and hurt US security. They reminded Trump and viewers that NATO members came to the US aid after 9/11 and have stood together for 77 years. Allies' stance on the Iran war. How are key allies responding? And the picture is clear. Europe's major powers are not sending troops to Iran. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said it plainly on March 16th. Germany will not participate in the war against Iran because there is no UN, EU or NATO mandate. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk similarly announced Poland will not send troops to Iran. France has been especially vocal. French officials emphasize NATO's defensive role. One of President Macron's ministers reminded everyone that NATO is for European/North American security, not for launching offensive missions in the Persian Gulf. France even refused to let US cargo planes carry weapons over its airspace to Israel, drawing criticism from Washington. Italy has also been cautious. Rome temporarily barred US bombers from stopping in Sicily, before saying bases remain open under existing agreements. Spain closed its airspace to US-Iran strike missions. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Britain will only get involved if actions are legal and planned. Initially, London blocked US use of bases for offensive strikes. In the Mediterranean, Turkey's President Erdogan, who is a NATO ally, said clearly that Turkey will not get dragged into the war, though he condemned any attack on NATO territory. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney likewise stressed Canada was not consulted or asked to participate and would support de-escalation under international law. In short, no NATO ally has pledged troops for an Iran land campaign. Their public statements and actions, blocking flights or denying support, underscore that this conflict is not seen as a collective NATO operation. NATO's role and implications. Legally and historically, NATO's mission has always been defense, not offense. Article 5 requires allies to consider an attack on one as an attack on all, but it does not obligate members to join wars unrelated to a member's defense. The alliance was created to secure Europe and North America, not to carry out strikes in the Middle East. Experts note that invoking NATO for the Iran conflict would be unprecedented. No member has ever withdrawn under Article 13, and none is pushing for it now. However, the current crisis has rocked NATO's cohesion. Reuters reports officials saying the US threats have driven a rare split. European capitals are now bracing for a future without the Americans. Many see this as the alliance's worst crisis since the Cold War. If unresolved, it could reshape how Europe and the US cooperate on security. For the US president, these divisions complicate his strategy. President Trump's firing of military leaders and aggressive rhetoric may rally some voters, but many in Congress and the public worry about abandoning long-term allies in NATO. That's our report. Sources in this script include Reuters and AP dispatches and official statements from NATO and governments, ensuring a fact-based overview of this complex situation. Fact-check note on disputed claims. Claims that President Trump ordered a ground invasion of Iran or that he fired 3 generals for opposing the invasion are not supported by reliable sources. US officials have discussed expanding military options and do plan to send more troops to the region. But no official invasion order has been given, and Pentagon briefings stress they have not decided to send forces into Iran. Likewise, reports of 3 generals sacked over Iran war policy stem from unverified social media. In truth, the army chief and 2 senior generals were relieved in early April by Defense Secretary Hegseth, but authorities gave no link to policy dissent. Official statements simply thank General George for his service. In summary, no evidence confirms these rumors. The facts from Reuters and AP show only routine personnel changes and no formal invasion mandate at this time.